Okay, cool.
Great. So here is the brochure page. I just pulled up the one for Copenhagen. The easiest place to find who the academic or the global advisor is for your program of interest is to go to the other information tab. And down at the bottom, it says program advisor, Sarah Stratton. So that would be me. Maureen's will say her name. But again, if you forget where that's located and have questions, you can reach out to either of us as well. Great. So this is the brochure page. I don't know if you've all had a chance to kind of look over our different brochures and different programs, if you have an idea of which ones you're most interested in already, but all of them have basically the same application that you would need to fill out. Once you're on the brochure page, if you hit apply now button, it will take you to what term are you applying for. You'd want to hit spring 2022. Unbelievable that that is the application cycle we are now on, and then hit apply. Once you're on here, you will see all the different things that you need to fill out in order for your program or your application to be completed and be submitted to us to be able to look over and make sure that, you know, to consider you for the program that you're most interested in. Up here are some required documents. These are just going to be digital signatures. They're going to have information on here that we just want you to look at to acknowledge that you've seen this information. And a lot of times these are going to be issues and topics that we're going to discuss more in depth as we get closer to you going abroad. But we really want you to acknowledge certain aspects of it before you even submit your application. In terms of recommendations, we do require one general recommendation, and this needs to be from a faculty member. We don't want you to use your academic advisor because we will reach out to the academic advisors on our own and just check with them as well. So we do prefer that you use a faculty member or a professor or a TA or someone who can speak to your ability in the class. And that sort of thing. The request is pretty simple. All you do is put in the name of the person and the email address if they're part of WashU or if they're not part of WashU, depending. And then it just sends them an automatic email asking them to go online and fill this out. It's pretty basic, not difficult for them to do, but we would recommend reaching out to that person first and making sure that they're willing to speak on your behalf for study abroad. Outside of that, we do have quite a few different things that you need to fill out in terms of your personal information form, program preparation goals and outcomes. This is really where you're going to say like why you're interested in this program, why you want to go abroad. Really try and be as specific as possible as to what your professional, personal, and academic goals are for going abroad, because some of our programs do receive a high number of applicants. And in order to set yourself apart, you really want to have specific reasons for that specific program. Any questions at this point? I know I just kind of went into the application, but any questions at this point for about the application process or anything like that? Feel free to unmute yourself and ask.
I have a question. So for the internship ones, like when I try to do the application, I didn't see a recommendation. So do those not require one?
They should have one on there, and I can double check and see why they wouldn't. So thanks for pointing that out. It should be on the internship application as well. You've looked on like the Asia Pac and the London one?
Just the Asian one.
Asia one? I'll double check that. And if it's not there, I will add it. And so anyone who started an application will be notified that it's been added.
Okay, another question. Does it could you use something for another recommendation from another program, like for ISBA, or would you have to get a whole nother one?
This will be a new application, so it would need to be a new recommendation. We can't use a recommendation from a previous program in this situation since it's a totally different program. You would need to get a new one. It could be the same professor, faculty member that you got it from before. And it would be the same process. They would get the email and complete the little survey, but it would need to be a new one that is tied to this application.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Any other questions about the application process? Great. So one other thing that, oh, yeah, Sam, do you have a question?
Is this done on a rolling basis, or is there like a certain deadline to apply?
Yeah, great question. There is a deadline to apply. So the application deadline for this upcoming spring semester is June 15th. We will not, I mean, we'll look at applications in the sense that we'll look at numbers that have come in and completed applications, but we are not going to start reviewing applications until after that deadline. So you can apply up until June 15th at 5 p.m. or whatever it may be that you have time. So it's not something that you need to do right this instance. You have time to do your research, to look into it. I know you all have exams and that sort of thing. So find a time that works for you to really focus on filling out this application, but you have until June 15th.
And I will point out, someone let me know that there is like a place on our application. It's on all of our programs where it says rolling admissions. That's just like something with our system, our application system that lists that. So ignore that. It isn't rolling admissions. All students need to be submitted by June 15th, like Sarah said. So again, I know that's listed on there. We're pretty sure we don't have the functionality to change that. It's just a thing with the Teradata system that we use. So I know that's listed there, but it's not correct.
I have a question. So with that being said, they're going to use our GPAs from this spring and all the way back, correct? Like our GPAs.
Yeah, any classes that you have completed by the time we look at your application. So when you apply, most likely you won't have grades for this spring yet, but when we look at your applications, grades will be in. So we will take that into account as well. We'll look at the GPA that you listed, and that was leading up until the spring semester. And then we'll also look at what your spring semester grades looked like too. And the requirements for all of our programs are a 3.0 GPA. So to apply to any of our programs or be considered for any of our programs, you need to have at least a 3.0 GPA. Any other questions?
Do you know, so for the Pan Pacific, internship one, do you know, I know it says 3.0, but what is the average of people who get accepted? Do you know?
That's not something we track, to be quite honest. So the minimum is the minimum, and that's what the expectation is. We can't accept students below that for our partner programs for that reason, and for a number of reasons, it's that minimum. But yeah, the average, I don't have. I'm sure we could tally it up manually, but it's not something we track or need for our purposes.
Sam, you had a question?
Oh no, that was from before. Sorry.
Oh, okay, sorry.
I have a quick question, actually.
Yeah.
So for the program that I'm looking at applying for, there's a language requirement, and I won't be able to take that class until the fall semester. So how would that work in terms of applying now?
Yeah, so is that for the Madrid program?
Yes, it is.
Yeah, great. Nope, that's perfectly fine if you're planning to take that class. So I think that's Spanish 302, I believe, is the course requirement.
Correct, yeah.
Yep, if you're taking that in the fall semester, that's perfectly fine. You would just make note of that on your application.
Perfect, thank you.
Yeah, of course.
Just as a point, that's the same for any prerequisite requirement. So like Asia Pac has, if you want to take the finance, that has the finance minimum. And so as long as it's completed before you're going to be starting the program, but that does also mean you could be accepted, you have this minimum requirement, and you need to pass that class then in order to be able to go on the program. So it is a bit of a conditional acceptance, but that's something that's pretty common for our programs. So that's the language requirement isn't the only one. There's a few programs that do have some prerequisite courses that need to be done.
Yeah, and since you are registering for classes, I believe in April, for the fall semester, we'll also know if you are registered for the classes you need to register for by the time we look at your application. So that shouldn't be, like Maureen said, that shouldn't be an issue. Yeah, Alexis.
So for the Asian specific one, isn't there like this like prep course they make you take in the fall?
So that it's 300A international. I don't even know the full name of it, but 300A is what we call it. That's all students take that. It's a
Okay.
1.5 credit course that any student going abroad on one of our BSBA semester programs in the spring takes this half credit course. And they must pass it in order to be eligible to actually go. So it's a prerequisite, but in a different way than you might think of the academic prerequisite. It's the preparation course so that you're prepared for the program. Not academically per se, but like culturally, you know how to get your academics taken care of, you know, health and safety. So more of it, not academically focused, like completing a course, like a language requirement or something.
So
And that,
so will it be like released? Like what? So when we apply, is it like you have to be accepted first to enroll in the class, like later? So it's
yeah,
fine if we don't
so
have it this.
yep, you won't have it when you register in this spring. When you register in April, you will not register for 300A. Once we accept you into the program, we separate that 300A is usually in 2 sections. And once we know our numbers, we decide which programs are in each section. So what we do is ask you to keep your Friday mid-morning, usually afternoon, early afternoon open, because that's usually when 300A will be. So it might be, there might be a section from like 11 to 12:20, and then another from 12:30 to 1:20 or whatever it may be. So we ask that you keep those times open so that when you do know which program you're going on, we can tell you which section of that class you'll be in. Great. So another thing to consider when filling out the application is this question about alternative choice selection. So because our programs, some of our programs have very limited number of spots available, and we want to make sure that everybody who meets the prerequisites for study abroad and wants to go abroad is able to have some sort of experience abroad. We do ask that you rank your second and third choice as well as the application that you're applying to. So you might apply like this, in this case, I'm pretending to apply to Copenhagen Business School. And while we have spots available for Copenhagen Business School, what we also need to do is write in what my second choice might be out of all of our programs and what my third choice might be. And this is so that when we do go to look at everyone's applications, we're still able to offer you a spot of acceptance on a program, as long as, like I said, as long as you meet the prerequisites. But it might not be your first choice program depending on the competitiveness of the applicants in that pool. So what we really ask you to do is when you're doing your research, you know, try to be as flexible as possible when selecting your programs and thinking about your time abroad, and have your top 3 choices ready to go for your application.
I have a couple of questions. So with the internship, when there's only like 3, right? There's London and whatever, the Asian Pacific. And then what I was reading was it's like you, depending on where you want to stay, you either stay in Australia, Hong Kong, or like, I'm not sure of the other 2 cities, but like if you want to stay in one, like Australia, like how do you make sure that happens? Or does it like switch? Like how does that, would that affect the ranking?
So that's not part of the application process. That's program specific. So within the Asia Pacific program, students who are accepted, then they indicate where they would, the location they'd want to do their internship. So between Sydney, Australia, Singapore, or Hong Kong. But what Sarah's talking about is the alternate choice. So if you apply to Asia Pacific, that's your top choice, that internship program. Then your second choice may be the London internship, and your third choice might be the Hong Kong study abroad program. So this is about programs you would want to be placed in, not specifics about an internship or about the program itself that you're applying to. So this is the first step. So we receive all these applications where everyone's applied to, and then we go through, we read everyone's applications and then place people, whether it be their first, second, or third choice. And then from there, once you're placed, you make program specific decisions depending on internship location, and start getting into the details like that. But this is just the first step in applying to the program.
Okay. I have another question. So like, so, okay, what if you're a person that, okay, so like I don't know any other languages. So like, let's say, like for me, like I'm trying to stay in Australia and London because of the language barrier. So like, and I know that like Hong Kong and the other places don't have requirements. So like, how would you like, I'm concerned about how would I survive not being able to communicate with people because I don't speak Chinese. Or yeah.
Most students on our program don't speak the language of the location where they're studying, but that's not to say that having a preference to be studying in an English speaking country can't be a priority for you. So in that case, if you want to do the Asia Pacific internship program, you can list that. Within that internship, if students say they want to do their internship in Sydney, then they're given that as their top choice and they will get an internship in Sydney. Then you may list your second choice as London, and maybe your third choice is the semester study abroad in Sydney. So that's fine. You can prioritize how you rate your programs based using whatever criteria that you want, whatever you're looking for out of your program.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
And all of the internships too are also in English. So that's not an issue. If you did decide to go to Singapore or something like that, your internship would be in English. It wouldn't be in a different language. So also something to keep in mind.
Are the internships paid or does it depend?
None of them are paid. I guess if we're talking about the like ranking of choices and things, it might be helpful to explain to you guys the competitive programs and like what's the difference between exchange programs and non-exchange programs and how that might play into your alternative choice rankings. I think that's something that is going to be something people need to be more thoughtful of this semester or for spring 2022 than maybe previously. So first, I'll just explain what an exchange program is, even though it might be obvious in the name. It's a program where we send students to a partner school and then they send us students. And so we agree on the number of spots we have available per semester. So I can tell you what our competitive exchange programs are, where there's limited number of spots available. So if you apply to one of these programs as your first choice, it's really important to consider what your alternate choices are going to be and making sure you would be comfortable on those programs as well. Because not only are these generally competitive programs with limited spots, but in spring 2022, we anticipate even fewer spots than we've ever had before due to partners just trying to prepare for the first semester, hopefully back to study abroad after COVID. They aren't going to accept the largest cohort they've ever accepted, and they want to really be conservative. So our really competitive exchange programs are the Bocconi program in Milan, ESADE in Barcelona, CUHK, HKUST, both the Hong Kong programs and the Singapore management program. Those are generally our most competitive. Overall, I anticipate Bocconi and ESADE, so Barcelona and Milan being the most competitive with the fewest number of spots that we've ever had. And so we are trying to be very transparent with students that if those are their top choices, to prepare to be going maybe somewhere else. And so if that's your top choice, great, apply for that. We don't want to discourage anyone from applying to their top choice, but we want people to be really prepared for what their second and third choices may be. And so I usually say, don't apply for Barcelona as your first choice, then Milan as your second choice, then Hong Kong as your third choice. Those are the three most competitive, three of the most competitive programs. And competitive doesn't mean better. It just means there's limited spots available. There's nothing better about exchange programs than direct enroll programs that Sarah will talk about. It's just the nature of the number of spots available. It doesn't make them a better experience for students. It's just the one logistical aspect of managing study abroad programs that we're trying to be open about. So again, when ranking programs, just really consider that. And we're happy to talk through more like what you might want to take into account. What program are you looking for? Do you want to be in a a European city, great. We have other programs in European cities besides Milan and Barcelona. So like, let's talk about what those are. If there's a program, like a course you're really interested in, well, let's look at the other programs that might have a course that's similar. So we will help you find a program that you're interested in, but just being open and flexible, which I know you guys all have practice in over the last year, is going to be really important through this process, especially in spring 2022. So that was my long way of talking about what exchange programs are and what you should be considering as you apply, especially if you have your heart set on one of those programs I mentioned. I guess any questions about those before Sarah talks about her direct enroll programs and what things you might need to consider if you're applying for those?
I was wondering for like study abroad, I think I was told by my past advisor that like only certain cities are open to certain majors. So I was wondering like how you know like which cities are available for like which specific major.
So that maybe you were talking to someone in overseas programs potentially, or arts and sciences. So that's the case for their programs, that different programs are aligned with different majors. And so you would look on the program brochure, it would say which the approved academic areas of study are that can go on that. For BSBA programs, all BSBA students are eligible to apply for any of these BSBA programs. Like we've kind of touched on, there are some prerequisites, like for Madrid, there's language. For Asia Pac, there's finance. So those things, but beyond making sure you meet the prerequisites, our students are eligible to apply for any of them.
Yeah, and we've partnered with, we feel that our partner institutions that we work with offer a good array of business classes similar to what we offer at Olin. So we don't have specific, like Maureen was saying, like if you're a finance major, you should go on this program, or if you're a marketing major, you should go on this program. We find that the schools that we tend to partner with have similar course listings or offerings to what we offer. So that's why they're open to any of our business students. So yeah, I can talk a little bit about direct enroll. So direct enroll is a little different than exchange in that we have more spots available, because the exchange is our students, maybe we have 4 students going to Bocconi and they're sending 4 students here to WashU. But with direct enroll, we're just sending a group of you to Copenhagen or to Maastricht or to Dublin. And you are integrating as one of the students on campus there. So the direct enroll, we do have a little more freedom to offer more spots available, but that doesn't mean that those also aren't competitive. I will say for our program at the University of Sydney in Australia and also at Denmark at Copenhagen Business School, we tend to see the highest number of applications to both of those programs. And just because they are direct enroll doesn't mean we can end up sending like 50 students to that location. So we still have a cap on the number. The cap is a little higher. Usually we send no more than 25 students to each of those locations, because we do want you to get out and meet other people in the community and not just have your little Olin or WashU bubble somewhere in Europe or somewhere in Australia. But there is a little more support in terms of the people that are going with you. You might know more people who are planning to go with you and have that support system in place, as opposed to going on one of our exchange programs where maybe only 2 other people from WashU or from Olin are going. So, I mean, there are a lot of differences between the programs, but like I said before, all of our programs, you're able to take business classes. So I think one thing to really think about is, what location are you most interested in being in? Are you wanting to be in a bigger city, a smaller city? Are you wanting to be somewhere where English is the native language? Are you wanting to, be somewhere where it's a different language? Are you wanting to be somewhere where you can easily access other locations? So those are all things to consider, because most of the programs that we partner with have really great course offerings. So yeah, that's just a little bit about that. Alexis, you have your hand raised.
So these are different than the internship ones. These are just regular study abroad.
Yeah, so these are going to be the traditional going to a university and taking classes. Our internship ones obviously are a little different in that you will go to that location and take classes for a number of weeks and then do an internship for the remainder of the time. And I can let Maureen speak to that a little bit more, unless you had like a specific question. Sorry, Alexis, I cut you off.
You're fine.
Yeah, I guess in terms of like spots available, these are Olin managed programs, the Asia Pacific and London program. They're Olin managed. We get to work with our partner to figure out what is the maximum number of students we can send and accommodate and make sure it's the quality experience that our students deserve. And so there's not those limited number of spots like the exchange programs or maybe some of our direct enroll programs, even though they're larger numbers, there's some limits placed, but we have full ownership of these programs and have some more flexibility there. So yeah, not the same structure by which the group sizes are determined. Any other questions about the process of kind of deciding which program and all the things to consider? All right. I guess we can kind of talk about what the timeline is after you submit the application. I'm looking, is there any other thing on there that is worth pointing out that might, a passport copy? I think you all know what that is. I don't know if there's anything else kind of.
Yeah, and as you go through this, and if you're not sure, like, did I submit it or did I save it, for your options, once you hit submit, I didn't put anything in here, that's why. So once you hit submit, a check mark will appear next to it once it's completed. And so once you have all of these with check marks on them, as well as your required signature documents, then your application will be considered complete. As long as you request the recommendation before the deadline, even if we haven't received it, your application will still be considered complete, because we understand that it's not up to you as to when the recommendation comes in. It's up to the person that you requested it from. So while that is a consideration, we will still consider your application even if we don't have that recommendation in by June 15th. However, I would recommend trying to get all of, requesting your recommendation maybe early on in the process to give that person as much time as possible to turn that in by the deadline, if at all possible.
All right. Well, I guess Alexis?
Yeah, I was going to ask, so for financial aid, do you know how that would work?
So students who apply and are accepted on one of our programs, they pay WashU tuition, they receive any scholarships and financial aid that they would normally receive on campus. For any specific questions, we certainly are not experts in that. So you would want to talk to your student financial services counselor, I don't know that name correctly, and chat with them. So you certainly could start having those conversations now, but it is, you do pay your WashU tuition and receive all of that same aid and scholarships you would. And we do have opportunities through Olin as well for other support that students will be notified of about how to apply that to that and everything as well. So that does exist too. All right. Well, I guess so. Once you've got all of your check marks done, like Sarah said, it's not rolling admission. So as long as that's all done by June 15th, then to give you a little background, normally we would send placements out like in a normal year, pre-pandemic, end of June, beginning of July. We're pushing that back. Students will find out their placements likely early August. The purpose for pushing that back is so that we can try and really see like what is the world looking like as much as possible before we place you on a program. And so hopefully we'll have some information from our partners about what they're seeing on the ground, how they anticipate the spring semester looking. We really want to make this, we are optimistic that spring 2022 is going to be a more normal semester abroad, but we want to give ourselves as much time to evaluate that as well. So what that means is in early August, students will be notified of their placement. Then with it after that, students have 2 weeks to commit to the program. So what that means is logging back into your application and committing and saying, yep, I'm going to go on this. And then you have about another 2 weeks, 1 to 2 weeks to submit what we call a statement of responsibility. And that statement of responsibility outlines all of the financial obligations you will have, what the withdrawal deadlines are, and just agreeing to what the program lays out. And what you're saying that I will do all of these things and I understand my responsibilities. So then that gets submitted. Within that time, there's a lot of communication going on. So Sarah already talked about, we'll tell you which section of 300A to register for. So you will get that on your schedule. You will start working once a student is placed and is committed to the program. Then we also send nominations to our partners. And so they also have to approve the nominations that we send. And then after that, our partners start emailing students and letting them know what the application process is to the foreign institution. And so there's a lot that happens, and it depends on what program students are accepted to, what order that happens in, how quickly it happens, if there's a visa process. So like all of that's kind of going on as well. And then within 300A, we do walk through all of this as well and tell you what to be on the lookout for, give you a timeline. And so you're not left to your own. You will have a timeline to consider, so you understand what you're agreeing to. But again, that early August is the first time students would be notified of placements and have the opportunity to commit or decide to withdraw. There is not an opportunity to switch between programs. A placement is final. As you can imagine, students have their heart set on one program, and that's why we're having these conversations early, is to be prepared to maybe not be placed in your first choice, so that when those placements come out, you feel excited about the program you got placed in. We generally are able to place students in their top 3 choices, but again, this is going to be our first, maybe second semester back in the swing of things, definitely with a bigger cohort of students going abroad. And so there may be a need, and we've had to do this in the past, where we ask students to rank 4th, 5th, and 6th choices, because we want students to get placed on a program and we want them to have researched it and felt comfortable with it. And so I'm not saying that's going to happen. We're just trying to prepare students by being transparent about how things could go, again, with this being a new type of abroad experience that we're all going to be figuring out together. So, but yes, early August. And then from there, there's a lot of communication, a lot of commitments, a lot of deadlines that students need to stay up on. Questions about that process? Great.
Great.
Questions overall?
Yeah, I think that's all we really had planned to talk about today. So I know that might have been a lot of information. It might have been a lot of information you already knew. Either way, thank you for joining us. If you do have any other questions, feel free to ask at this point.
No? All right. Bye, Sam. Unless you have a question, I don't want to kick you off.
No, I'm good. Thank you. Sorry. I was just gonna go to the
No worries. I didn't want to say goodbye. If you had a question, I'm happy to chat, but I know we'll probably chat again soon. So thanks.
Yeah, we'll be chatting soon, probably. Thank you.
Awesome. Have a great rest of your week.
You as well.
Bye. Hang on, I'm gonna.